let's get into the big topic of open source, something that we actually say.
This is so awesome.
Are an open culture that
it's actually a big piece
what is that process that a developer, or let's say,
as the Kubernetes ecosystem really boomed.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the Ask an OpenShift Admin live stream. This is episode 140, and we are joined by the user experience team, right? I want to make sure I'm saying this right. Okay, yeah. We're joined by the user experience team. We've got Peter, Matt, and Joy. Today's going to be awesome. So Peter and I met at a customer thing in Florida a month ago or a couple months ago, I can't remember. And so we were talking about some things back then, and then the follow-up to that was getting back to here. And so today is going to be awesome because they have a lot to talk about. As always, the Ask an OpenShift Admin live stream is part of the Red Hat office hours. So just like at your college or university, if you have a professor that holds an office hour, so you can come and ask questions for anything, like that's basically the idea. Come in, ask us anything about your user experience with OpenShift, about OpenShift in general, or Kubernetes. We'll do our best to answer your questions, and if not, then we'll reach out internally and we'll get the right person to answer, and try and make sure that you're not just stranded out there with this really super important question to you. As always, if you can always reach out to me, Jonny at redhat.com. If you have any questions that you want to ask, maybe offline, or maybe if you're watching a stream and you're coming back, or Sully at redhat.com. So SULLY at redhat.com. So I will go ahead and kick this. Oh, actually, before I kick it over, I'm sorry. Let's go through the top of mind really quick. So not a whole lot going on. We have the KubeCon coming up the week of the 12th through the 15th. So we will not be streaming that week. However, if you are in Salt Lake City for KubeCon, I will be there. So I will be at the Argo booth, and I will also be at the OpenShift Commons event. So if you're out there, please stop by, come say hi. I will try and have some stickers or at least some kind of swag. So if you stop by and say hi, then I'll try and hook you up. And then finally, we have the ACM team coming up in November. And we've got a lot of things kind of like we've got a lot of pokers in the fire right now, trying to figure out like what's going on with scheduling for the stream. So stay tuned. We'll make it happen. All right. So with all that, Matt, welcome. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you. And just to follow up on that KubeCon plug, we actually, Joy might speak a bit more about this, but we do have, for Commons, we'll have two designers attending Commons and working to run some workshops there. So we'll have Joy there, who's here today, and also Alan Roy, who's in our ACS.
Awesome.
Might have lost Matt.
He's back.
I'm back. Am I back? I'm good.
You're back.
All right. So anyway, I'll introduce myself. I'm Matt Carlton. I'm one of the managers in our user experience design group here at Red Hat, and I'll pass it over to Joy.
Hi, everyone. I am the UX lead for ACM, so Advanced Cluster Management for Kubernetes. Been with Red Hat since about March 2020, and have been in the multi-cluster space as long as I remember it. Pass it over to Peter.
Hey, y'all. I'm Peter Kreuzer. I'm one of the design leads in the OpenShift space, mostly the OpenShift console, anything that happens with OpenShift Cluster Manager on console.redhat.com. Also, any related other OpenShift products, we kind of cover it all with a focus on virtualization lately. But yeah, nice to meet y'all. Glad to be here.
Cool. All right. So I'm going to just start off with a quick, I guess, high-level intro of our team generally, like the UX team generally, and then dig into a little bit more about this team specifically and what we cover. The UXD team at Red Hat has been around for about 15-ish years. We are made up of, I think that's over 130 people on our team, and that's a mix of actually design, development, and research. And I will underscore research because it's something that we've been really focused on growing in the last couple of years, especially just as have shifted. I'm back. Am I good? Okay. Sorry if I keep dropping. Yeah. So anyway, we've been around for about 15 years, and we generally cover all the major Red Hat platforms. If you're thinking OpenShift or RHEL or Ansible, like we're across all of these different areas, as well as any high priority things that come up. If it's AI, if it's virtualization, like Peter alluded to, like we're there in those spaces. Our team is centralized, so we're definitely we're able to go where the customers are and where customers need us to be to figure out how to solve their problems and come up with solutions that kind of work with them and help them utilize our products the best way possible. So that's where our motivation is. That's a broad kind of, I guess, description of our team, but more specifically, we have a core team of OpenShift designers led by Peter here that focuses obviously on core OpenShift. And we've built a lot of different interfaces for that platform over the years. We've been working in this space for a long time. The three of us represent a much larger team of very talented designers and developers and research that have been focused on core OpenShift, but also all of the things that sit on top of OpenShift. And if we're talking like managing the infrastructure for OpenShift, like ACM, like Joy talked about, ACS, OCM generally on console.dot, or like assisted installer for bare metal installs. We're in those spaces and been working in those spaces for a long time. And on top of that too, like anything like layered things on top of OpenShift, like virtualization or new things like Lightspeed, we're heavily involved in that and really motivated to push those experiences and make sure we're delivering things that customers actually need and not just things that we think they want. I'm going to talk a little bit about the old us versus the new us is kind of how we think about it. Our team has been around for a long time, and we've been working a certain way for, I would say, a large part of that is been us being involved with teams and basically just being there to help solve for the solutions that were presented. And that typically looks like us doing wireframes or designing the UIs. And it's always been a lot of us coming in and saying, hey, you guys have defined some solution that you see a customer needs a UI for, and we're going to do that thing. And that's something that we worked honestly really hard to build those connections with a lot of product teams, because before our team existed, there wasn't a ton of that work happening. So that's kind of the foundation of our team. And through all of that work, we've built a lot of solid connections with the BU team and the engineering teams to like really understand the product spaces and really understand priorities. I like to think of us as an evolving team, though, for sure. As I stated at the beginning, we've grown a ton. We have a lot of designers now. We have a lot of researchers, and continuing to prioritize really understanding our customers. So not just relying on what we're being told as the problems that need to be solved, but also really wanting to be part of that interaction with customers and understand like what do they actually need and how can we bring our skill set to that. Designers definitely offer a lot more than just spinning up like a design program and putting wireframes together. That's actually more of like an output, an end product of a lot of the good work that we can do. And we've been more focused on that earlier stage of things, of really connecting with customers, and through those connections, through those opportunities, start to look for opportunity to define problems that they're having, and then through our methodologies, our design methodologies, like solve for those and iterate in those solutions, and not only do that in the UI. When I say we want to go where customers are, it's about if they're, we can solve problems for them in the CLI, we're going to do that. If we can better understand the API and what it offers customers, we're going to do that. We're not going to be restricted to just this graphical user interface, which I think has been more common for us in past years. People associate us, it's like UI/UX, and we really want to put a space between those things and say UX definitely has to do with the UI, but it's more broad than that, and we have more opportunity to represent customers and figure out what's the best experience for them, regardless of what that output is. the last thing I'll say before I pass it off is we really care about this end-to-end experience from like a day 0 all the way to a day 100. We don't specifically care too much about the acronyms of our products because we see our customers as consumers of a platform and not just one single acronym. If you're an ACM customer, you definitely care about OpenShift and you probably care about a bunch of other things. And so we want to make sure that we're wrapping our head around that entire experience for that customer. So like, how do they start? And how do we make sure we're building a foundation of knowledge and education for them when they come into our portfolio and use a platform like OpenShift to like really understand how can they expand on that? How can that meet the needs of their business? So we're spending a lot of time now wrapping our head around that and generally the learning experience for our customer, because we recognize like the UI is a strong tool for customers to learn about what our products can do. And so that's really where our focus is and where we've been doing a ton of, I would say, great work. This team has done a lot of work recently around that. So I'll stop. I'll get off my soapbox. I'll pass it over to Joy.
Yep. And real quick, Joy, before you start, I'm sorry. I do need to say, Sully will be back. He's got like an important customer meeting. So Fan or K&A, thank you for asking. I'm sorry, I should have said something. I just got too wrapped up in making sure that I said the things I needed to say. So I apologize. And Matt, I'm glad you made the distinction between the UI and the UX, because I am definitely guilty of combining the two, right? I'm definitely the UI/UX, where like I think making that distinction between the two is it's important, right? And I agree with you guys that you guys are doing awesome work. Like it's so far, like from a UI perspective, that console is amazing, and then the being able to make the changes and stuff like that, and tune it to where I can do the things that are important to me, I think are just incredible. So awesome work. All right, now Joy, I'm sorry. I just want to make sure we got the Sully part out.
Yeah, for sure. We gotta get that part. So I guess like thanks Matt for that, and I wanted to jump in and kind of like share an example of like how we've been refining existing like graphical user interface experiences. And I don't have the screen share for this, so Peter's gonna help me screen share here. One of the things that I wanted to show was talking about the ROSA wizard, which a lot of y'all may have seen, but we'll show it again because we've done a great amount of work on kind of simplifying that. And so, perfect, it's sharing now. So I guess like right now, Peter, do you want to just talk through it as you click through it?
Yeah, I could go ahead and do that. So if you're not familiar with ROSA, it's Red Hat OpenShift service on AWS. It's basically our managed OpenShift offering on AWS. So if you're interested in having upgrades handled by our SREs and not having to worry about this, is kind of one of the offerings you could take a look at. But the reason we're bringing this up is because we have created a GUI-based wizard for this thing, which we wanted to show here. So basically what this process is that we just want to touch on quick here is the process of creating your ROSA cluster for the first time. We have two different versions of these. Basically a hosted cluster, which is HyperShift, if you're familiar with that. It's basically the control plane is hosted by Red Hat, versus a classic cluster, which is where you manage the worker nodes on the control plane. So I'll just create one of those. So what we really want to highlight here is this wizard has a couple steps. This first step that we're going to take a look at here is really around linking your AWS account, making sure that we can create the needed resources in there. But really after that, you just get into the process of creating the thing. You can give it a name. You can choose your OpenShift version, the region it's going to run in, the availability of it. You can see there are some more advanced settings that we highlight in this thing. So we generally hide those. And if you know you need them, then you can modify them here. But basically, I just wanted to highlight is like how we've approached this wizard in the past. And Joy's going to show you how we're planning on updating it. Things you can notice on this part where we're now deciding what machine pools to use on this cluster is we have settings like the instant metadata service, which is maybe a more specific AWS specific setting. Maybe not all users need to specify this thing, the root disk size, but there's a couple steps here. In general, I guess maybe I'm biased, but I would say this thing is somewhat easy to use, I guess, compared to maybe a CLI where you just have to specify a million flags. But taking a look at this, we did think that there was more opportunity here. So maybe with that, I would pass it back to you, Joy.
Yeah. So also just like noticing that what Peter just showed, there was maybe around like 6 to 7 groupings in the whole like steps and substeps. So more along that. And how do I get my screen up? So I think I'm ready. I think I have my screen shared, but just making sure everyone can see it. Right, perfect, thank you. So as you just saw, like there was a mix of like many types of like form fields, along with like a lot of the descriptions and kind of like statuses going in there too. So right now, this is kind of like that revamped wizard that we're talking about, where one of our designers did like this whole audit on all of the form fields, like what's required, what's not, what's there by default, what sorts of things you can or can't edit, and just like going through it one by one to make sure that this whole process of like going through this is a lot easier. And so here's the idea here is that we've kind of split the fields into a basic and additional grouping. So the first step here, it has like 3 substeps. It has the details, roles and policies, and then also the networks and subnets. And so like once you go through that, that's all of the required fields that you need here. And if you do want to configure things that are important to you that you know you need, there are also the encryption, networking, and cluster updates form fields here that you can do as like this additional setup. So this is really interesting because I guess like once you are in that basic setup and you have all your required fields configured, you can actually go and skip to a review. And as you might notice here as well, there are more tooltips in context that you now have to help you through that. And we've gone through every single one of them to make sure they're like very useful and does provide you more context. And there's like link out sometimes to give to link out you to docs. So it also gives you default options that you can rely on without you inputting things manually. So with that, let me just like paginate through this. There's the encryption keys, networking, cluster updates there. And then when you get to the review and create step, you can see exactly what sorts of configuration like you just chose. And then you can also see here, like there's a kind of little caution info message there that says like there's also these lock settings that you might want to just take an extra look at to make sure you don't have to do like a back and forth afterwards. So ultimately, this whole process has been redesigned to cut down on a lot of time and hassle to help people just get to what they really need, a functional cluster up and running. So yeah.
That is awesome. Yeah, I especially like the edit setup at every top level menu because I know that I jump around quite a bit, and if I'm going back and reviewing, being able to go back to a specific section instead of having to redo the entire wizard, this is awesome. Very nice.
Yeah,
I would add to like one of the main motivators for all of this work is to just ensure that we're prioritizing the customers that we understand are utilizing this UI to make it easy and fast for them to create these types of clusters. We know that they want to get through this fast, but we also know that there's a lot of complexity here and make sure that they can still find the information they need and still learn as they're going. Like I had said earlier, it's about teaching users. And so that's kind of at the core of this, is Joy showing these help text popovers, like making sure we're educating and people get this understanding, like an expectation that our UIs are going to help educate them as they go.
Yeah, and giving useful information as a help context versus just like enter the number of CPU, like actually providing something where it's like, oh, okay, that's why, that the reason behind the madness or whatever to input something there is it's very nice, because if you're trying to figure it out on your own, or if you're brand new and you really have no idea, having something to help kind of like guide you and really like gently tell you like, this is why you need to do this, or this is why it's important, I think it's awesome.
And I guess I'd say one thing that we're keeping in mind is when I first went through the existing wizard, some of those settings are maybe settings that not all customers would use. Maybe they're like slightly more obscure. So I mean, honestly, part of the process of simplifying these things is understanding which need to be surfaced to everyone versus which can be settings that maybe require one extra step to be able to go set. So one thing that we're taking a look at is, even after you go through this entire ROSA wizard, perhaps at the very last step, we can give users the option to view the YAML that was actually being created based on their selections, and if they want to specify maybe more advanced or settings that not everybody might use. So I think, Joy, did you have perhaps a design you can show of that?
Yeah, as you're talking to it, this is kind of the update of that last review and create step that Peter is talking about. And like, feel free to chime in as we do this too. But as he was saying, for those configuration that, like might be more obscure and that, like users might not care about during their first ROSA cluster creation, but want to maybe still be able to access or configure as they're doing this. When you get to the last step here, we've added in a YAML editor. So once you get here and press on this, you can see that there's a modal with a YAML editor with also this like in context schema as well as all the shortcuts you might be familiar with if you've used it on OCP, where you can see configure all those extra like parameters that you want to and create a cluster from here. Or if you want to just copy and paste this and use it somewhere else, you can do that too. So that's
cool. That's cool. So I'm just, and this is just me like nerding out here a little bit. Like, is this where I could actually add, like, say maybe if I had my own identity provider, like I wanted to use GitHub OAuth or something, right? Would I be able to add that YAML here and then have it, like, once it's all spun up, it just kind of creates it, or would that be something I have to do after the fact still? Is that still like a day 2 thing?
So I think like those are the type of settings we're trying to determine what we want to surface in this YAML. But I mean, honestly, that could be the type of thing that was surfaced inside of this YAML, because maybe we don't want to prompt every single person for that information. But if somebody's inclined to specify it before on day 0, they can go ahead and just specify it here. So that's a good example.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different identity providers. It'd be, I mean, like your list of like defaults would be crazy. But like I don't know, I think it would be kind of cool.
Yeah, as these types of features, like this is something that will get implemented in OCM, and so as these features go out, we don't want to just ship something and say, oh, we've done it, we've completed it, we're good, we walk away. It's really about, that's a first pass. What can we learn about this? How can we understand like what's working, what's not working with customers, and continue to iterate on these things and learn from that. So like that type of feedback, Jonny, is like exactly what we want to hear and what we want to like start to track and understand what opportunities are still there to improve this as time goes on.
Gotcha. And Matt, you like when you were doing your introduction, you said something like it's actually one of my favorite words when we're talking about OpenShift and Kubernetes. It's evolution, right? Like this stuff is evolving and it's just getting better and better, and like the knives are getting sharper and stuff like that. So yeah, it's I think you're starting at a great place. I think the work that y'all have done is excellent. This to me as a nerd, I'm like, oh man, this is awesome. Being able to go in here and actually, dive a little bit deeper than what the context, the graphical context is letting me do, I think is amazing.
awesome. Well, that's all I have to share, but I do want to say that we want to share experiences that are broader than just the GUI. So
yeah, so actually that'd be also there's a decent segue. I think Walid in chat, you alluded to the fact that perhaps maybe you wouldn't use a wizard or not always use a wizard, or maybe you're more interested in using Terraform. So I guess like that might be a decent segue. So we just shared an example of a GUI that we're trying to make as simple as possible. But as mentioned at the beginning, we're definitely thinking of not GUI-based interfaces, including CLI, Terraform, basically the whole experience. So kind of on that note, one thing I did want to mention is we've been putting a lot of thought into how we're surfacing GitOps to OpenShift users today, and if there's anything we could do differently. The reason I bring that up is perhaps we could steer some of our users if they're inclined to use GitOps, just to go that route almost from the beginning. So we're taking a look at the experience of how someone creates their first cluster today. Is there more that we could do to sort of present GitOps as an option, maybe be slightly prescriptive if users are interested in that? We get the sense that some people out there, they have an idea of what GitOps is and that they might want to use it, but they aren't exactly sure how to get started. So currently we're taking a look at, is there more prescriptive templates that we could present to people that are interested in that sort of thing? We have validated patterns out there, which are basically GitOps templates. Johnny's better to talk to that than anybody else, but basically, is there more we could do to present those validated patterns to users to get up and running? I don't know, Jonny, if that's an opening to maybe plug validated patterns.
Yeah, thank you. You're better at plugging the patterns than I am. I'm terrible. But yeah, like we're actually looking at next fiscal year, working on some UI integration where, Peter, I think you and I kind of talked about this a little bit in Florida, where you go into the console and you basically say, hey, I want this, this, and this, and this, and then it gives you the different, like, hey, you need to set these values, or if you're going to integrate between these two, here's what you have to do. But then have that same experience on the CLI, where it's like maybe we have some type of shell wizard or something, some kind of magic thing that happens where you basically get the same or similar experience, and you can really dynamically create things, and then have it deployed through GitOps. So yeah, I think Peter kind of helped like spark the fire, the idea fire when we were talking about it back in the day. But well, hopefully we can make something happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'd be great, and I'm be curious if anybody watching the stream right now, if you'd find that useful. But that's definitely one thing we're considering. Also, to go to sort of go along with that is we're considering how our documentation around OpenShift is presented today. Certainly, we have a lot of documentation out there on how to complete OpenShift tasks via the CLI and via the UI. But we're wondering if we could be more prescriptive with our, like your GitOps repo structure, that type of thing. Could we offer documentation to specify basically how to do a task via GitOps as well? Because we know a lot of people are doing that. So that's one thing I wanted to mention as well. Nice.
And we've got a couple questions, and I'm not sure. I don't want to put you on the spot because this might not be your area. But like one of the questions from K&A is the UI for OpenShift pipelines is great, but it's not comprehensive, or it's buggy for advanced users. Like where would somebody go and create like a bug for that or an issue for that?
I don't think I know. I don't know if Matt or Joy, if you know exactly off the top of your heads where you could enter that. But one thing I was going to do is drop maybe the 3 of our emails in here, just if you want to follow up with one of us or all 3 of us, and we could help route that. So I could do that right now.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best thing. Like it's sometimes tricky, especially for that level of type of feedback, where exactly is the best place it. But we are happy to receive those messages and kind of make the connections necessary to pull that feedback in.
Awesome. And then rhope9 had asked, is there a way to perhaps generate those parts as a template, and then at creation you would cherry pick these company policy approved snippets? So maybe if they're creating a ROSA template and they have like something that's already approved, is there a way to like cut pieces of it out and then reapply, or do you just basically have to take the whole thing and then reapply like an entire manifest? So I don't even know if I'm asking this correctly. Like I'm trying to like basically here's the question exactly, because instead of me trying to reword it, is there a way to perhaps generate those parts as templates, and at creation you would cherry pick these company policy approved snippets? And then he's asking, like, would it be done at the YAML editor, or is there another way of doing it? Like basically, can you do it through like the UI context, or would it be through the YAML editor?
So I guess I could try to field that one. So we're definitely thinking about like how if you were to say like in the middle of the wizard, turn on one of the settings that is presented in the wizard, it would be reflected in the YAML editor. So I guess like if that's the type of thing that you're interested in recreating, like getting that particular snippet, I guess I would say we don't have a plan for it yet, but it's definitely something that we're considering as far as like, could you get just that YAML snippet of that particular feature? So I mean, that's an interesting idea, something we could definitely consider with the YAML editor, which is underway.
Awesome.
Yeah, I think as features like this do ship, we expect that type of feedback to come in, and then for us to understand, like, because I would say this is like scratching the surface of the potential of this, and I think like Scott in the chat alluding to different opportunities or different ways that YAML can be utilized, and so we're very aware that introducing a feature like this is only going to open up more possibilities or ways that people will kind of look at this and say, oh, I wish it would do that. I wish it would do this. So gaining that kind of feedback is incredibly important for us. Like we're always trying to track this and measure the impact of the features that we deliver. That's a big part of like kind of what I was talking about at the beginning of like how we've honestly changed. We have a lot more skin in the game now when we push features. Like I would say the YAML editor that is going to go into this experience was very heavily influenced by the UX group. We saw that as something that customers needed and pushed really hard, work with the BU and the engineering teams to get that implemented. And so now we feel like we want to see that thing all the way through and see that it succeeds, part of that is following up and iterating and working on like continuing to improve it and, you know, evolve it, right, Jonny? Like that type of approach. So we're definitely more in that headspace than we've ever been, I would say.
Yeah, and just to, and I know you guys are gonna jump on it a little bit towards the end of this, right? But like, even with what Sully showed on our last stream with the virtualization menu, right? Like, I think that at first I was kind of like, oh man, that's cool. And then like the more I thought about it, I'm like, it just makes sense, right? Like, especially you use OpenShift, you install ACM, you get a new console, so it kind of gives you this like very specific context to go in and do a thing, and it helps you target the workflow that you're trying to get to at that point, right? And then like same thing with the virtualization, same thing with pipelines and stuff like that. Like just being able to like quickly do the things that you need to do. Maybe I just need to go and run a check really quick. Maybe I want to go and scale something up. So I don't know, whatever that thing is, having the ability to go in and do that thing really quickly, or run it from a CLI, or run it through a GitOps workflow or DevOps workflow, whatever you're doing. Yeah, it's cool. I'm digging it. And I just want to answer a question that or as reply to a statement that Waleed had made about Red Hat Developer Hub. So I would say that Red Hat Developer Hub is getting better. Hopefully your experience, this is another product that's going to evolve, right? So if you look at Backstage initially, especially when Red Hat started really getting involved with it, Backstage didn't really do dynamic plugins or anything like that. So there was a lot of work that you had to put in to get Backstage kind of operational. Red Hat Developer Hub was like that initial productization. And then I think that's also going to be something that we see that evolves in, like where workflows get simplified through that. So it'll be more of like I don't know what to say, you'll channel your workflows through that Red Hat Developer Hub, and that'll be your interface. So that will definitely get better over time.
Yeah, so I guess were there any other questions we should cover?
I don't think so. I'm going through everything right now. So if you want to start on something else, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess just like continuing the topic of other focus areas aside from GUIs that we were taking a look at, I did want to just briefly touch on how we're taking a look at CLI interactions. So I go ahead and share my screen. Also, when I'm done sharing this, I'll share the link. But basically, what I wanted to highlight was, sorry, one moment here. Was basically, so one of our designers has been very focused on the CLI experience. You can see his name up here, Justin Hale. So basically what our team has been taking a look at is, there's a lot of different Red Hat products that use the CLI. We can't possibly cover every single one of them, describing every single flag that's being prescribed. So maybe what we thought would be more effective is perhaps just coming up with a set of guidelines that products at Red Hat could follow, as far as naming conventions around new flags or new commands that are being created, integrally the type of help text that is being shown, when to use short name options for commonly used flags, that type of thing. So I wanted to share this just in case if anybody out there wants to take a look at it and offer thoughts on it. But these are the type of things that we're hoping to push forward with the CLI experience, basically to make more of our CLIs consistent too. Ideally, if you're moving between Red Hat products at the CLI, you shouldn't have to relearn syntax, that type of thing. They should work fairly consistently, which I know we've already mentioned once in the chat here. So I just wanted to highlight this as an example of other ways that we're trying to think about various interactions.
I love this. I really do. I just having like a framework to kind of like map your, hey, I want to do a thing, right? And then having like, how do I align with all the other tools so that way I'm not creating something that's going to be, I'm already creating something that's going to be different, right? But how do I align it with something that my users are already familiar with?
That's exactly the goal. Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think for our group, this type of work historically has been less common, but it's actually something that we are pretty passionate about now, because we see it as like a real problem solver for a lot of customers. Or like, we know a lot of our customers spend a ton of time in the CLI, yet our team historically was not spending enough time focused on improving that experience. And now we're correcting that and saying, like, we need to stop, associating just with GUIs, say that's our only thing. It's like we go where the customers, like to Peter's point, it's like there's a ton of improvements that we can make there. And because our larger UX group operates the way it does, it's like design work and stuff that happens in Peter's group isn't siloed to this group. It's shared. And like that entry that we have there is documenting that. It's kind of spreading across our group to influence other experiences too for that consistency. And that's really like a big part of this is like, we want to improve.
Oh, got him.
Right when I get to my, anyway. Yeah, so I just want to kind of reiterate like that kind of sharing of the work that we're doing and make sure that it's consistent across the different products that we support.
Yeah, and I think like a lot of my feedback, or like when we're talking about this stuff, like my ideas as this stuff is happening and brewing, right? It's everything I do is in some type of GitOps workflow, right? And so I think when we do a lot of things that are very UI focused, right, or all the workflows are very UI focused, it makes it extremely challenging when you're trying to automate a deployment through GitOps or some type of DevOps thing. And I think that, like, especially our audience, where we do a lot of automation, either through Ansible, Argo, Flux, whatever it is, right? We're doing some type of automation. When all you can do is make these long, crazy API calls to basically do what you're doing in the GUI, it makes it extremely, extremely challenging. And especially in the GitOps workflow, where you're trying to make sure that the thing that you did is actually done and it's healthy, and then you're trying to monitor the state of it. So having that ability, or moving that very, maybe not the exact same experience, but a lot of parity of that experience that you get in the UI down to the CLI, and making it where it's exposed to a controller like a GitOps controller. It makes all of our lives easier, and I think it helps with the bigger story of what we're trying to do with Red Hat, with like hybrid cloud, like literally run your app anywhere, any place, anytime, and being able to control it that way, I think it's going to be awesome.
Awesome to hear. Yeah. I guess one thing I did want to plug too, I dropped the link to those CLI guidelines in chat. Where that's hosted is our UXD hub. So that's our department's location where we put all our design work. Matt Carlton and others have put a lot of work into it in particular. But I guess I just wanted to say, if you check out that link and also go back to just the homepage of it, that's where a lot of our design work, well, hopefully all of our design work, is being hosted. So you can take a look at what's kind of in flight or planned or already in the process of being implemented as far as Red Hat products, new features, that type of thing. Also, we have some of the methods, that type of thing, of how we work. Matt, I don't know if there's anything else you want to say around UXD Hub.
No, yeah, that's a great summary of it. It's just really us trying to be more open about the work that we're doing. We're designing in the open. We want people to be aware of the work that we're doing, and that's across the company. We have a ton of work that happens across Red Hat, and I think we want to just make that as available as possible to people so they can inform that and learn from it. So that's really it's a platform for collaboration and awareness.
Cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks.
And I just want to respond to a question that I got. Let me see. I'm sorry. Okay, from Jill S. Maurice, what has been the majority of external customers' concerns when starting out with OpenShift? I'll take a stab at this. I don't know if you guys, feel free to add any input that you might have, right? But Jill, I think, like, especially from my perspective, coming from consulting, the big issue was it's always been like this idea that OpenShift is complex and Kubernetes is easy. And I think that, like, once you make the distinction between like what you get with OpenShift and what you get with raw Kubernetes, I think that it kind of helps settle that discussion a little bit, because Kubernetes by itself, to deploy just a vanilla Kubernetes cluster with nothing, it is insanely easy. Will not argue that at all. The OpenShift install experience has gotten significantly better from OpenShift, the early days of OpenShift 4 to OpenShift 4.17. I mean, it is significantly better. It's easier. The documentation's better. But the things that you get out of the box with OpenShift, even on just like a vanilla subscription, is 100-fold more than what you get with a raw Kubernetes deployment. And so I think that that's probably the number one concern, is the weight of OpenShift. But then when you realize like really what you're getting, I think it helps kind of sell it. And the other part of it is making that actual declaration that OpenShift is Kubernetes. Like, so there's no doubt about it. Like, we use deployments, we use all of the Kubernetes raw artifacts and stuff like that. Like, there are there's no doubt that OpenShift is Kubernetes. It is just a opinionated, enterprise grade Kubernetes edition.
Yeah. I mean, I think to just add on to that from the UX angle is like understanding the platform that you get. And that's where we definitely come in, where we're trying to better connect these experiences for our customers, where they don't have to have this deep understanding of like, what is OpenShift and all the things I can do with it necessarily. As they use the product, that perception evolves, and it's because we are helping them do that through their experiences, and we don't put this like heavy responsibility on a customer to like fully build and utilize the thing on day one and make all the right decisions when they deploy that first cluster. We want to make sure that the experiences that we're delivering support that learning process and that evolution of like where they need to be down the road versus like on that first day. So that's definitely something that we're more focused on now more than ever too.
Yeah, it's just from an install experience, right? Like just, back in the day going 4.2, to now understanding like, okay, here's where all the things are. I think that we've learned a ton, we've evolved a ton. I think the install experience has gotten much more stable. I think our documentation that outlined that path for installs has gotten much more stable. I mean, the user experience in assisted installer, right? Just going into the console and being able to click through a GUI and being able to create a cluster that way, I think is amazing, right? And I think that the context is so well done because it's like, okay, here's the things that you need to do. And if you need to go above and beyond, you can still do it via CLI, right? And I think that like that just shows where, as a company, we're going to make this better for everybody, right? And really making it to where it's approachable, consumable, right? I'm not sure what the right word is there, but like just making that experience better and easier. So I'm happy to say the least. I'm happy with where things are because I was doing the 4.3 stuff back in the day, and I used to get really angry. And to see how far it's come in such a short time, I'm very happy with where things are.
That's awesome to hear. Yeah, I mean that's what we're working towards. I guess maybe that's a decent segue. Maybe you had the OpenShift design team on this call, and we have yet to actually show the OCP console. So maybe now is as good a time as any. So we pull that up. We have a couple things we want to talk about there.
All right. Oh, I think I shared the wrong screen. I'm sorry.
Oh.
Boom. Here we go. My bad.
No problem. Similar content. So yeah, so this is a console that we've certainly, as the UX team, have given a lot of attention in the past and intend to keep doing that. There were just a couple of things that we are, thinking about or have in flight that we just wanted to share with y'all. And also, if you have any thoughts or feedback on them, feel free to just drop that in the chat. But I'm guessing a lot of you are familiar with this interface. So this is the OCP OpenShift console. The first thing I wanted to highlight was just this, what we call the perspective switcher, which is the administrator or developer perspectives. Basically, we had grouped these two sets of interactions into things that maybe an administrator would want to do versus a developer. If you switch over to the developer perspective, it's a little more oriented towards the workloads that are running on this cluster. We're highlighting builds. Also, you can kind of customize this to show more or less of the infrastructure type resources, whether you want to see those or not. Whereas if you switch over to the administrative perspective, this is sort of where we expose, most of the Kubernetes and OpenShift resources that you would need to get this cluster running. You can see the workloads that are running, your compute resources, pretty much everything you need to get this cluster orchestrated. Also, in the developer perspective, I didn't show it, but we also highlight observability quite a bit because you want to know, is this cluster running well with your workloads on it? But the reason I'm bringing this up is we're giving thought as to how these two perspectives are broken up. We're working with one of our product managers, Ali Mobrum, to sort of think through, could it even be time to maybe merge these two perspectives into just one single perspective if you're interested. Always have the option of turning the developer perspective back on. But we're getting the sense that a lot of people are moving between these administrative and developer perspectives. So I guess that's one question. If anybody uses OCP console often and you find yourself moving between these two perspectives a lot, we'd love to know that. We get the sense that does happen. So I just want to mention that. I guess I'd be curious, Jonny, do you have any thoughts on that or your experience with it?
Yeah, I don't use the console too often, but like normally when I do, it's usually through the administrator perspective or through like the ACM uh, plugin.
That's also very helpful context. Yeah, because that's just understanding where our users are. That's really, I mean, that's a great point. We know a lot of, as we've talked about, GitOps is not done through the console. So that's the other thing I wanted to talk about is maybe if you're starting to use a GitOps workflow, for a lot of these resources, I'll try to pull something up real quick here. So for this pod, and for example, we do have access to the YAML. So this is all the YAML that describes this pod. But one thing that we're thinking is, could we have a version of this YAML that's just copy it straight out of the console and drop it into Git, and now you have a GitOps version of, maybe pod's not the best example, but just basically in general the YAML of a resource to be able to do that. So kind of like maybe tailoring the console a little bit more towards GitOps workflows. So if you're in the process of maybe converting to GitOps or learning GitOps, learning Kubernetes in general, maybe the console could be a tool to help you do that. Just another thing that we're starting to put some thought into.
Well, and that makes sense, right? Because I think a lot of times, especially if you, from the perspective of like, I'm learning something to put into a GitOps workflow, or I'm learning GitOps, whatever that perspective is, right? A lot of times you're going and you're doing it first manually to kind of get an idea, like how to understand, like, what is this thing actually going to do? What should I expect? That way you can start tailoring your checks around that, right? So being able to say, okay, hey, let me apply this, and then go in here, scrape that out, and then put that into a repo, I think it's a good idea, especially for somebody that does that a lot, right?
That's good to hear. Yeah, it's definitely something we're considering. I guess it goes back to our topic of, we know people are using GitOps, so let's figure out how to do that.
And from me says, yes, please merge the perspectives. It's annoying to have to switch back and forth.
That's good feedback. Thank you for that. We appreciate you taking the time to say that. I guess the maybe one of the other UI elements I wanted to call attention to is, so I'm in this particular project or namespace right now, which is OpenShift Multis. This is just the one that this pod happened to be in that I opened. But this interaction is something that we've had for a while. It can be handy for moving if you have a lot of project namespaces on a cluster. This is the way that you can move between them, see resources that are specific to those different projects. Also, generally, we always have a all projects view, so if you just want to see all those resources, you can do that. We have gotten the sense that sometimes when creating a resource or when viewing a resource, people can lose track of what project or namespace they're in. So we're giving thought to how could we maybe rethink this interaction? Is there a way we can make this more obvious or make it a little bit more intuitive as far as for that resource you're looking at, this is the project or namespace it lives in? So I guess I just wanted to name this one as another example in the OCP console as far as something we're reconsidering as to like how we could approach this.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of like I'm trying to think of like the things I get grumpy about when I do stuff like that. For me, I think if I were to create something, I guess I would usually expect it to be at the top of, like, so say if I create a new project, right, and I'm looking, especially in the menu really quick, like my created thing should be at the top in that drop down. But at the same time, like I feel like I'm just nitpicking.
Yeah, that makes sense though. Yeah, those are the type of things we're trying to address though. So that's also helpful to hear. I was just taking a look at the chat. Thanks for all this feedback. Yeah, this is great to hear. Exactly the type of stuff we're hoping to hear. I know, Jonny, you also had dropped our emails in chat. So I guess I would say, again, if you have any thoughts or you want to get up with us, feel free to reach out to us. I'd love to get that feedback. But maybe I'd stop sharing the OpenShift console unless anybody had anything else they wanted to mention about it. All right. Yeah, and so I think, so I guess that's another example of an area we spend our time, an interface that's very important to us, and I know a lot of our users, so that's why I wanted to highlight it there. But yeah, with that, maybe I'd pass it off to you, Joy. I know you had some work around the virtualization space we'd love to touch on.
Yeah. I mean, you were mentioning about the perspective switcher, and I think this might have been shown a couple of weeks ago around updates to the 14 console. Losing my voice. But one of the things that I want to kind of like re-mention is that like in this new, or not 14, 417, I'm sorry. not the future. There's, I guess, like with the perspective switcher, I'm really curious too, because one of the things that like this back and forth does is that we're kind of assuming that there are two personas that are using this separately, hence the switch. But comments, we hear you. And the other thing that I think the virtualization team is trying to do right now is that we're also utilizing that switcher to bring you into this other perspective, and that is having that virtualization perspective and kind of like talking about it more from the user experience standpoint. This is something where we're trying to simplify down that learning curve for the users coming in, maybe like from our other virtual machine worlds, to only show me the navigation items that relate to the virtual machines. So things like if you allow me to share my screen here. I think I'm already sharing it, but if you bring it up, this is going to be the same screen that Peter was sharing, but in here you can see that there's an additional virtualization selection right here. And if you do press on that, you're going to get this little welcome. What do you want to do? Do you want to go create your first virtual machine? But if you look here, it's basically a subset of the navigation menu items in that admin view that relates to virtual machines instead of the full menu. And I'd love to hear like any feedback around this as well, because this is kind of, as we were saying, like we're continuing to evolve this, and this is kind of the first step that we're taking in hopes that the users coming in don't feel as overwhelmed with the navigation and can dive into the specific areas that they care about that's relevant to their workflow. So just like clicking through it, it's things that you would actually like see in an admin view, but it's just filtered down. So you see your catalog, you see where you can create your new virtual machines. And there's like different ways to do it with like instance types, and also the old way is the template catalogs. We'll also welcome feedback here as well, because I know this is giving you two options to do one thing, and I think we're trying to evolve this as we go as well. So if you have any comments, thoughts on how you've used this, how this works, whether or not this is effective in lowering that learning curve for you, like please do use those emails and comments on YouTube and send us any feedback around it. I guess anything to add? Or
I would just say too, like our hope is to continue to visit you, Jonny and Sully, where we can talk about some of this stuff in the future as well. Like our Peter and I've I think alluded to this a bit, but this team's focus is definitely in the virtualization experience and trying to really understand like how we can improve that experience for our customers. And there's already a lot of great work happening here by the team. So coming back and being able to dig into some more details and kind of just tease that out now, but hopefully provide more value in the future as this work continues and expands from our team.
Oh, absolutely. And y'all are more than welcome to come back. Just let me know when you're ready and we'll get you booked. I can say, just from the amount of interaction that we've had from the audience, right, that this is a topic that people care about, and so I think that people are passionate about what they're doing, and I think that they're passionate about what their user experience is, and I think that's on display right now, right, especially with Waleed and from me, right, like they're and our Hope 9 especially, like they're talking about their experiences that they're having, and that's because that's real feedback that they're going through, and that they're getting back from their users that they're deploying the service for. So we would definitely love to have you all back. And like I'm just as a nerd, right? I want to keep seeing the evolution, right? I want to keep seeing it get better and better, and like the blade's just getting sharper and sharper. You know what I mean? So it's exciting.
Yeah, like our group is highly motivated to kind of challenge the status quo of experience in these products and really push hard to meet the customers where they are and deliver really delightful experiences, not just like, oh, this is like pretty good for UI. We want like that level expectation to be released for Red Hat products in general, and that's where our motivation is, and it's driven by like the discussions we're having with our customers. So the feedback coming in is like, awesome, this is what we want. We want more of this to really help inform the direction we go and the work that we push and prioritize.
Awesome.
Yeah. And I guess, like, speaking of virtualization, and as the ACMer on this on this call, I would love to give like a little sneak peek on the upcoming 2.12 release, which is, I think, coming in about a week or so. So you might have seen already like a little bit about what it is, where we are continuing to evolve like the virtualization presence, like on ACM for those who need it. And so one of the things that I wanted to highlight is that for the 2.12 release, we want to make virtualization kind of more accessible. And it's not just virtualization too. It's like making sure that the users, as we're talking about, like they can get to what they want very quickly and take action on it. And so one of the things that we did is elevate kind of the ACM search to the highest level of the menu, which is here. You can see. Wait, am I sharing my screen? Not sure, but
No, I'll share. Sorry,
okay.
I think I just turned it
Sorry.
off. Yeah.
All right, so you can see me now. Let's see. Is this cropped? Okay. All right. So you might remember, let me see if I have this. Okay. So this is the older version of it, 2.11. And you may remember, but search is kind of like within this first level menu of home. And then you can go down and you can see search in the submenu. But we want to make sure that this was like front and center, because this is a very powerful capability that ACM offers, where you can, filter down using the metadata that's available on your resources and get to results very quickly and see the details of it too. So want to highlight that this is now at the top level, and you can drill down into your workloads, anything of you can save your own searches, in fact, when you find a query you like, and also share it. And as an example here, we have a suggested search template where you can just look at your virtual machine resources on a click and be able to see details of that specific virtual machine very quickly within the search, as well as be able to access actions that you might have seen from last time, like the start and stop and restart, pause and unpause, and you can edit it, delete it, view related resources, which is something that ACM is, I think it's a cool feature. It's like magic. And besides that, in kind of this left-hand menu as well, within infrastructure, we also have that kind of like similar to like what search is populated here. If you know specifically you just want to see virtual machines, you can also click on that, and we have a cropped table list output of that list of virtual machines as an entry point here, and you can even launch out to that on your OCP console directly from here, and as well you can access all the actions that I just talked about earlier. So that's a new update for you. And I guess one more thing to mention, I know we're close on time too, is that we in Grafana, so I don't have it in this 2.12 dev instance running, but we also can access Grafana from the page, and we also have these dashboards available where we've added in kind of different variations of it. And one of them that you might want to check out later is this executive dashboard for virtualization, where you can see like the clusters that have virtual machines on them, and just like a little more detail than you get right now in terms of what you can see. So things like additional details around like the VMs by OS, VMs by cluster, the top 20, and resource utilization as well, top 20, and kind of the details within it. So it's pretty neat. But of course, that's
Heard it here first.
Yeah, you got it first here. Share this episode with your friends, y'all.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I think, I guess, Joe, was there, I didn't want to interrupt you. Is there anything else you want to say?
No. I was just saying, I mean, that's just a glimpse of what's coming. So I hope we're back on here. And of course, we'd love to, hear your feedback as we continue to evolve this, because this is just the first step. So email me, email all of us.
Yeah, for sure. And on that note, it does sound like there's some interest in having us back to talk virtualization. So we'd love to do that. One topic I just wanted to mention that we would definitely cover is migration of VMs. We know it's of interest to a lot of people right now. So we're taking a look at what that experience could be. We know that people might be running a lot of VMs, so we're taking a look at migrating them at scale. making sure that there's quality observability towards that process. It shouldn't be just this black box of like select thousands and thousands of VMs and click go and just hope it works. We want to make sure that that migration process is obvious of what's happening, and if there are any issues, you know how to rectify them. So that's definitely something we could take a look at. I'll say some of our design team is already taking a look at the migration experience just to see like, are there obvious pain points that we could address? So hopefully by the time we're back next time, we could talk to you about some of the solutions we're proposing. So just wanted to mention that we'll definitely be talking migration and everything else virtualization next time.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm sitting here trying to figure out the different views on this thing now.
I like them.
Yeah, I think the feedback just from today's live stream, right, just in the comments, it's been awesome, right? So Walid's saying great work, awesome. R Hope 9, everybody's like, it looks like everybody's really interested and excited about the work that y'all are doing. So that's right. It's a tip to the cap on what y'all are doing, and just shows that from a small sample, the work that you're doing is appreciated by OpenShift admins all over the place, like because we're kind of all over the world. But yeah, I don't know if you want to, if you have any closing statements that you would like to make before we start wrapping up. To the audience, if you have any questions, if you're watching this later on and you end up having some questions, feel free to email the guests here. And if you don't see them and you just want to email us directly, go ahead and email myself or Sully, and we will get the questions back to them, or we'll get it funneled to the right team to get it answered. But yeah, if Peter, Matt, Joy, if you don't have any last statements, and we'll go ahead and wrap this up.
Yeah, no, thanks for having us. We look forward to coming back.
Awesome. Yes, and you're always welcome back. Let's just make sure that we're clear on that. You definitely enjoyed this, so looking forward to it.
Awesome.
So thank you for coming in and talking about this. And again, shoot us an email if you have any questions.
Yeah, thank you all in the chat. Thanks everybody watching for all the feedback so far. It's been awesome. Honestly, it's really interesting to get that real feedback. So appreciate it.
All right, see ya.